So hello, everybody. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Experts. I'm Dr. Meg Bouffier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have nearly 40 years of experience at NIH as an applicant, an intramural researcher, a staff writer, and now a full-time NIH grant mentor. I've helped clients land almost $600 million rather in federal funding. And I'm here to answer your NIH grant writing questions. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So if you're attending live, and I know people are still logging in, a reminder that you're in listen only mode. You can put your questions in the Q&A box. If you have comments that you want to share with the group, you can put those in the chat box. If you're watching this as a recording, and I know more and more people are doing that, both on the course dashboard and on our open YouTube channel, just a reminder that it is October 29th, 2025, and everything we're saying today is true to the best of our knowledge, but things change very quickly at NIH. So do verify with program officers any information that we may be sharing. What you should be viewing in the library right now, well, I am giving the last of a 4-part live stream bootcamp of Master the R series tomorrow. That will be at noon Eastern time. So I would imagine that for many of you, you're working your way through chapters 1 and 2. Of course, a lot of your prep steps are going to be on hold because you can't contact a program officer right now because of the government shutdown. So until the government reopens, you won't be able to contact a program officer. They literally are not allowed to work during a furlough. That said, there's plenty of other prep work that you can do, both in databases at NIH, the reporter website, CSR ART, at the Center for Scientific Review. You could be looking for a study section. You can be vetting the project idea with your mentors and your colleagues. So still plenty of prep steps you should be doing if you're targeting a cycle 1 deadline for February, March. So we're going to pause here. I would like to introduce our guest today. Our guest is named Rachel Sabelli. She is the founder of Lacuna Global. And I met Rachel recently because a very long-standing friend and colleague of mine who is a department chair at Tufts Medical School has been working with Rachel and felt that it would be important for me to know her. And we've had some really interesting chats, and I thought it would be great for her to come here and share some of her expertise about project management. So Rachel, you want to tell us a little bit about your background and what your company does?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Rachel Sabelli. I'm the founder and lead consultant of Lacuna Global. So Lacuna Global was really built out of, or founded, I founded Lacuna Global out of this need that I was seeing that I've been working in research for over 10, almost 15 years now. And I noticed that when working with principal investigators, with investigators across the lifespan of their grant, and specifically at the beginning, there was this real disconnect between what they had written in their grant and what they had envisioned that they could do and actually doing it. In fact, and so I was just seeing a lot of project principal investigators really struggling to meet their deadlines, to meet their timeline, and felt that research operations and project management was something that they could really benefit from, and not just having a young graduate student come on with maybe little or no project management experience, but really having someone with an idea of her strategy and thinking through the best way to spend your money and to use your funds and to meet your timeline. And that's how Lacuna Global was born. And so I started it about 5 years ago. And so we provide support, research operations support, throughout the life cycle of the grant. So ideally, we like to work with investigators right at the beginning to set everything up. And when we start working with clients, we really like to continue working with them. So after we sort of set up everything, hire and train your team, write your procedures, get all of your IRB sorted, build your database, oftentimes finalize your assessment tools, think through all of those pieces. We really like to continue on with our clients after that setup phase, sort of a strategic and technical consultant throughout the phase of the grant. And provide then immediate troubleshooting. So, for example, if you're having recruitment issues or you're thinking about how to strategize to write your next grant, or you're getting ready to publish, and that immediate organization at the beginning is really helping you publish very quickly and meeting those goals as well. So, yes, we are here to sort of support you in any range. Yeah, and I can tell you a little bit more when I present as well.
Great. So, one thing that I'll add is that a lot of the people with whom I work are doing human subjects research, and one
Yes.
of the main problems that happens on their progress reports is not hitting their recruitment goals. And this was a huge problem at NIH many years ago, and I actually saw money rescinded as a result of
Mhm.
more than once. So, being able on a human subjects project to really hit the ground running so that you're set up quickly and hitting your recruitment goals is huge. It is
Yeah.
huge. So, and it also matters a great deal in terms of the competing renewal once you go for the follow-up grant. So I am
Mhm.
passionate about this topic for this reason. I think it's really important for human subjects researchers in particular to be aware of this.
Mhm. Yes, and I agree, and I've seen that with my own clients as well. And because I started Lacuna Global, it's that inability to you almost get lost in the weeds, right? You're worried about all of these operational situations, and you're not focused on really getting the participants that you need, the data that you need, and that can be really detrimental to future funding and to your research in general.
Okay, and I'm actually getting a message. Somebody is saying, turn on Meg's microphone, please. I'm just turning it up. But we did do a sound check, but okay. How is that? Hopefully that is, I just maximized all of the settings on my audio. Hopefully that's better. So yeah, whoever wrote that, let me know if, or anybody, let me know if the sound is better. Much better. Great. Okay. So, Rachel, you want to tell us a little bit more about the kind of work you're doing?
Yes, and I actually I have a presentation, so I don't know if I should just jump right into that instead. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Great. So I'm going to share screen. Let me know if you can all see this. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about, as similarly to Meg, I'm very clearly passionate about project management for all of those reasons. So I already introduced myself. In short, like I said, my job is to really figure out exactly what to do in a grant, tell people what to do, and make sure they're doing it in the most organized fashion to be able to hit those key timelines and time points and be able to get their participants and get the most out of their data. Um, so I'm going to talk. So a lot of you are here today because you're in the process of writing a grant. And so I want to talk a little bit about why having a named project manager matters. So to start out, what does it mean to name a project manager? And when you're developing your team, instead of writing project manager or project coordinator in your budget justification or even within your research strategy, you write in project manager to be named, and then you describe this very like they'll help manage the project and do X, Y, and Z. And then that gives the assumption that you will then hire someone at the time that you receive your grant. I would advocate that you name someone in that project management role and that it is really important to do so. Um, Now, I will say it's not likely going to make or break your grant, whether or not you name one. However, it will definitely make your application stronger and allow you to have peace of mind when you do get your grant. Um, so, like I said, I started Lacuna Global in this response to this very specific need that I was seeing that these principal investigators don't have the capacity and oftentimes the skill set to execute the grant as proposed within their given timeline. And In fact, one of my principal investigators at Boston College that I work with now, we were joking that there actually seems to be a negative correlation between organization and operations and being a researcher. And so this need for a project manager really matters to ensure that your grant comes to fruition. So for example, and I'm going to give another little anecdote so that you can get an idea of potentially what reviewers see on the other side. So, when you get a grant, you are usually juggling teaching, mentoring, other grants, and or if it's your first grant, you just really don't know what to do. And you have so many pieces to set up. You're hiring and training your team, you're writing your IRB, you're trying to figure out your procedures, build your database, liaise with partners, start an advisory group board. And this is a lot to get lost in. And oftentimes, researchers do get lost in this sort of day-to-day operation and they lose track of their timeline. They get overwhelmed. And when you don't name a project manager on a grant, they see that this is your trajectory and it is not a good one. And so naming a project manager really matters because it demonstrates the capacity and readiness to deliver what you're proposing on time. If you are naming a project manager, it really reduces reviewer concern about the feasibility of what you are proposing, especially if you get your project manager involved in the grant writing phase. To be able to say like that is actually not feasible to interview 1,000 people and code that data in 2 months. That's not going to work. And then it also ensures that the project really starts efficiently and stays aligned with the timeline that you propose for those reasons that Meg was saying before, that when you're talking about an NIH grant getting renewed year to year and you're not meeting those recruitment deadlines, when you are not spending out money fast enough. This is a huge way to not get additional funding, to not get additional grants. And so you really want to make sure you can deliver on what you propose. And so demonstrated project management really shows and gives credibility to reviewers. So here's a couple of strategies that I just want to highlight and drive home this point. When writing a project manager into your grant, there is some strategy, and your best strategy is really dependent on what your current situation is, what your current team is, the scope of your grant, what you're planning to do. So I want to give you a 360 view to consider some of the needs, and to highlight again why it matters that you need to name someone. So on the left side here, you are looking at some of the key things that I like to think about when you think about a project manager. You have to hire and onboard potentially. They ideally need some training and institutional knowledge of how your university works or how your organization works. To be able to build capacity within your team, to provide mentorship to younger researchers, think about undergrads, graduate students, to have a really strong organizational framework. And a very deep expertise of research. And I say that very vertically. So when you think about even the minute details of printing things to send to a participant, all the way to strategizing your next grant and publication, to be able to have that very long, that deep understanding of research is really important. And unfortunately, in today's climate, something else that you should be thinking about when you're planning for a project manager is whether or not you're planning, not that you ever plan to lose funding, but the idea that funding is a little bit of a start and stop nowadays. You're unsure whether you will get the same amount of funding every time, whether your funding will continue for a long period of time, et cetera. So that's something else to potentially consider when you're choosing. And I would never say that before, but now is a different time. So when you write this unnamed, potentially full-time junior project manager, which is the first column, they do not come with any of those things. And that is a huge detriment. And again, your reviewers see that, but more importantly, you will feel that when you are implementing your grant. And it's really stressful to you and can be very stressful. Oh, sorry, something just popped up. I want to make sure you can still see my screen. I think so, yeah. Whereas one option is to name an existing project manager in your lab or research coordinator in your lab, or even thinking about a grad student who wants to take a year or two and will continue in your lab, or a senior research assistant who could potentially be written in as a project manager. That can be a really good option because you don't have to do hiring or onboarding. They have the institutional knowledge. They're likely already building capacity within your lab. That can be a really good way to show that that continuity, and be a good option if you don't have a lot of resources to find someone else or a ton of funding to spend a lot of money on a project manager. So that's one potential strategy. Another one is that if you have a very intricate project, you can hire a full-time experienced project manager, and they are out there and you should name them. So if you have the ability to hire someone with a lot of experience in project management on a full-time position, then that can be a really great way to tick off a lot of these boxes. And but I encourage you as well to name them and get to know them in the grant writing phase. Of course, Lacuna Global is this this consultant on retainer idea, which I really advocate for, or I think that Lacuna Global's strength really is that we can sort of jump in any time in your project and provide that need, whatever it may be, and really hit the ground running. I've worked across so many universities, primarily in the public health field, but now branching into education and neuroscience and psychology. The project management piece when it comes to science is really very similar, and being able to sort of hit the ground running and know what projects need is really important. So again, it really depends on your grant and what you're looking for. And some things to consider when it comes to sort of the strategy of it all is, what is your best project management model? And some questions that I encourage you to reflect on are, what is the scope of your grant and deliverables? Are you proposing huge things? Really think about what each of those deliverables are and what the role of each of your team members is in it. What is the capacity of your current team? Will you have them or will you not? Do you have graduate students, undergraduates? Will you get a postdoc? Thinking about the capability of them and what role they could take on potentially in some of those project management roles. What other resources are available to you and your university and your institution? So especially if you don't have a ton of funding, and you're looking for a way to sort of like think more strategically about how to use funding, understand that your institution might have something like a CTSI or a research hub where they provide almost these same like retainer project managers or research assistants or something like that that you can tap into when you need them, when your grant really needs them. So check that out on your in your university as well. I'm always surprised that a lot of principal investigators don't know what's even offered at their own universities. So it's really important to look out for those and try to use them because they can be really cost effective too. Look at, again, how aggressive is your timeline? What are you proposing and is it feasible? And would it be feasible without a project manager role? And how will the needs of the project change over time? I think another thing that I typically see is that someone names a full-time unnamed project manager for 5 years across the course of their study at 100% effort, when in reality, if you are a little bit more strategic about it, you really need that person for the first year to set up everything. And then if you have, say, for example, a really strong lab, they can fulfill the needs of the grant, do a lot of data collection, do a lot of those things for the middle years. That maybe you don't need like a full-time project manager to be on top of all the time. So you can really think and be more strategic about your model as well. And yeah, there are some questions. So to really drive home the point, some immediate steps to strengthen your NIH grant or your foundation grant is to name your project manager and to work with them at the beginning to make sure that everything is feasible and makes sense. This can help you justify cost and savings. Like I said, you may be able to do it at different effort throughout the whole time period. It can make it more cost effective. It can help you make a more detailed timeline and milestone, which shows a lot of thoughtfulness and can provide you even with peace of mind when you hopefully get funding to be able to really execute what you said. There's no startup gap. If you name a project manager, ideally they hit the ground running and you're able to meet those first recruitment milestones. And additionally, if this project manager, say for example, if you get an experienced one and they have some additional skills that they could potentially use over the course of the grant, say for example, if they are also a content expert in your content, they can help with paper writing or strategizing for future grants. And so you can even be interviewing for those types of things when you're thinking about naming a project manager as well. So that is a little bit about why I advocate so much for project management and getting it in as soon as possible. But if you do have a need or you have a question, you are free to book a consultation. I am always happy to chat with anyone about that. Yeah, and I just want to say another thank you to Meg and the rest of the Bouvier team for giving me the opportunity today. So thanks.
Our pleasure. So, two things that really resonate with me that you said,
Yeah.
again, this whole issue of the to be named. Um, this is a question I get asked a lot by applicants. Is it okay for me to have the phrase to be named, in an application? And for some things, it's fine. Like it's okay if your grant is if you're going to use money in your grant to hire a postdoc, obviously you're not going to hire them at the application writing stage. And sometimes there are stipulations about advisory boards. You might need like a community advisory board in your application. But if it is a new application, then sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear this beeping at my house. They're doing
No.
work around here. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, there's like so much work going on at my house right now. But yeah, the community advisory boards, if it's a new application, often it says in the application you cannot name the board members. But then there are other things that you absolutely should name. And the two biggest ones that I see reviewers commenting on is that you haven't named your project manager and you haven't named your biostatistician. So those are two where reviewers often find that kind of an unforgivable sin on an application. You have to name them. And it's for these reasons. Like for the project manager, it's because they're afraid you're not going to hit the ground running and hit your recruitment goals, which is really hard to claw your way back from once that starts happening. And with biostatisticians, it's a whole other can of worms that if the budget is cut, sometimes they cut the percent effort of the biostatistician, and this is like not problematic. It's a whole other can of worms. But those are the two that I think absolutely should always be named. The other thing is your comment about how applicants often don't know what resources are on their own campus. Um, is a It is an ongoing battle that is fought by central offices. So I hear this from clients all the time who work in either RD or pre-award support. And the way that's structured on campuses varies. Sometimes it's housed in the same office. Sometimes they're separate entities. But if you're in the process of writing a grant application and you're new to your campus or you don't really know what resources are available, you absolutely need to visit both of these places and find out, for example, if there's some sort of centralized support for things like project management that might be funded out of a CTSA or other type of federally funded center on campus. Sometimes there's support for IRB or even just clinical trials in general. There's like clinical trial support offices where there might be project management skill sets that you can work with that might not cost you anything. So, so the first step is always check to see what you have available on campus. And if you don't have these things available, then, the most cost-effective thing to do almost always is to work with a consultant because you're paying for exactly what you need, nothing more, nothing less, and you don't have
Mhm.
to pay for benefits, which is huge. So yeah. So do people have questions for Rachel or any questions in general for either of us? And just a reminder that her contact information is in the chat. But we're happy to answer questions about anything. And again, I have not worked directly with Rachel. We have just met, but I will tell you that she came extremely highly recommended from a very long-standing colleague and very close friend who I've known for decades, who actually introduced me to my husband. So that's how long I've known this friend. But he just raved about her services. And as I said, he's a department chair at Tufts Med. So yeah, so I trust his judgment on this. So, feel free to reach out to her with questions. So, any questions for us? It's a very quiet group today. Let's see. Sometimes it takes people time to type in sometimes we get very long questions. So also if people have suggestions for any topics they want to see for upcoming oh, somebody said the chat appears to be disabled, but the Q&A is not, since that's where you posted this. Is the chat showing? Hmm. Are people seeing the contact information in the chat? It's showing to me that it's been posted to everybody. No, people are not seeing that. So, Riley, do you want to copy paste Rachel's information and put it in the Q&A since people can see that? I don't know why the chat's disabled. That's very odd because it's showing as the host, it's showing to me as if everybody can see it. But we'll just drop it into the Q&A since that's working. We won't waste time trying to figure it out. What is the current prediction for when government shutdown will end? Oh my. Um, so I have a couple of people who I know who I check in with who are government relations people and lobbyists and that kind of thing. And of course, nobody has a crystal ball, but it seems to be that the predictions are that there will not be a budget passed by the end of the year, like at all. And I will say that government relations people never speak in absolutes, and more than one of them has said to me, there's a 0% chance that there'll be a new budget by the end of the year. But having said that, that's different than a government shutdown. And this is an unusually long government shutdown, and it's hard to imagine that this is sustainable politically for a whole host of reasons. But in terms of the NIH budget, what these folks are saying is that the most likely scenario is that sometime maybe by late November, we'll be on a new continuing resolution, and it will yet again be a year-long CR funded at the FY24 levels. So for whatever that's worth, people may be watching this months from now saying she was completely wrong, but these are like not my predictions. So, okay. So we do have somebody who sees the chat with Rachel's contact information. That's odd. I don't know why it's disabled for some people, but we'll get it in the Q&A. How critical is it to not have a PMCID on a biosketch, even if you have DOI and PMID identifiers? Do you have an opinion about that, Rachel?
I don't. I think it sort of depends on who you're working with as well. They might be able to tell you a little bit more. I think it also depends on what exact role you want them to have. If they are a really integral part of your team and maybe have worked with you for a really long time, then that might be more important.
Yeah. I don't think it's mission critical. I think it's okay. On an NIH application anyway. I mean, Rachel works more broadly than I do. So she's speaking kind of like globally. I'm speaking specifically about my areas, NIH, and I think it's okay. But if people have other opinions about that, let me know. Um, okay, and I see things being reposted in the chat. If people still can't see that, let me know. But Riley, if you could put Rachel's information in the Q&A,
I
I don't know
can't
if you can
write
post.
in the Q&A.
Okay, okay. Um, okay, so you know what I'm going to suggest, Rachel, while we are talking with people, do you want to reshare that last slide that has the contact information so that
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
um I can see info already pasted about Rachel in the chat just as an FYI. Okay, so some people can see it and some can't. That's really odd. Not sure what's going on there. So but we'll get that up on the screen in case people um have questions. So okay, any other questions for us about things that are going on? I'm trying to think of what else I've seen. There's not a lot crossing the transom right now because nothing's being issued at NIH. So it's not as if there's like any new information. I'll remind people that I actually have we're advertising this more broadly that we've had this in beta testing for a while, but I think we're ready to hard launch First Friday's office hours, which is virtual office hours that I conduct on the first Friday of every month at 11:30 Eastern time, I think it is. So the next one's coming up on November 7th. We haven't been including, I've been mentioning it at these sessions, but we haven't been including it in our highlights emails or on our website or on the dashboard. But it seems to be a popular service. So I think we're ready to formalize it. So I'd love to see more people coming there for advising. How is NIH dealing with the fact that commercial publishers are not lifting the embargo on PMC articles? I actually don't know. Um, if anybody knows, let me know. And I know Becky's on the call too. A friend of mine is on the call. So if you know that, let me know. I'll repeat it. How is NIH dealing with the fact that commercial publishers are not lifting the embargo on PMC articles? Any other questions for us? Okay, we have a few minutes left. I'm just going to wrap up. Oh, we do have a question. Does NIH have a protocol to reschedule study section special emphasis panels that were scheduled and missed due to the shutdown? They don't have a protocol for that. And my guess is that they're going to, like we went through this in the spring with these missed study sections. So my guess is that they're going to be scrambling when they reopen in the same way that they kind of scrambled in the spring to get these things, rescheduled. And my guess is that in order to expedite the rescheduling, that they may do some virtual sessions. So there's always some, in my opinion, some quality of the discussion that is lost in a virtual session, a virtual study section session. But you have to weigh that against how much time is it going to take to schedule so that all these people can actually be on site again. It's very hard, as you can imagine. People's calendars are booked way out. So my guess is I don't know of any protocol that they're going to follow. We're really kind of in no man's land here, but my guess is that they're going to try to expedite it by doing some online review. With the new review style of review, the simplified framework, does this change how you approach the human subjects documents for a clinical trial? Not, NIH would say no, right? So the whole point of the simplified review framework, as NIH has said many times last year, is that it's not meant to change the way you write an application, it's meant to change the way it's reviewed. But how does one separate the two? I don't really know how that's even possible. Like, of course, if the review changes, the way you write an application is going to change. So I will say that as I've been working on human subjects documents, I am paying special attention to emphasizing rigor and feasibility, rigor and transparency, reproducibility, because and we've talked about this both in these sessions and in the boot camp and in the Master the R series. The new scoring criteria for approach, which is factor 2, heavily emphasizes rigor, heavily emphasizes it. So to my mind, one should be thinking about that as they're writing the human subjects section, looking specifically at the list of bulleted items that have to do with the rigor, which is the lion's share of the new approach scoring criteria. So I wouldn't say that there's a specific way in which I'm changing writing the human subjects documents, except to say that I am constantly thinking about how to fold rigor into the writing of the approach section and the human subjects documents. I work in an intensive teaching university. On an NIH grant proposal, reviewers mentioned the lack of history of NIH funding and no person with experience in NIH funding is named. How can the proposal be improved for future submission in relation to this issue? My guess is that you're R15 eligible. So I don't know if you want to follow up and let me know what mechanism you were applying for. My suggestion is if it was not an R15, it should be. So if you're at a place that is a teaching intensive university and you have very little federal funding on your campus, you're likely eligible for an R15 area grant. And the number of years and the dollar amount is smaller than an R01. However, that mechanism is specifically geared toward your situation. And so you're much less likely to get this critique. And that's something that, I work on R15s periodically, and I do include a couple of samples in Master the R series from R15s, but I'm happy to do a mini tutorial on R15s if people would find that helpful. They're a little bit different than an R01 because you have to include the whole point of them is to expose undergraduates to careers in science. And it's a little tricky to figure out, like, where's the line between actually having them do things versus exposing them to careers in science. And I have, in my own trainings, very specific examples of what that looks like. So if people would want to see an R15 training, let me know. So hopefully that was helpful. R15, that's the route for your situation. Does the new scoring system affect how the different sections of the proposal are written with previous subheadings, et cetera? So I cover this extensively in, we've done it several times actually, the simplified review framework. But I'm going to give you a summary of what I say, but you can find this in my blog post. You can find this in past sessions of Ask the Grant Writing Expert. You can find it in the bonus mini tutorials. It's all over Master the R series and the boot camp, but I'll give you a kind of a quick overview because we've already talked about approach. So factor 1 is now significance and innovation. And in some instances, it has not affected the way I have suggested a client structure their application. Sometimes I just leave it exactly the same. Significance, the part of factor 1 scoring criteria that applies to significance is not wildly different from the old scoring criteria, but the part that pertains to innovation is. And the way that it's different is that it allows for applicants not to be using innovative methodology, which is entirely appropriate in some situations. So sometimes an applicant is proposing to do a project, and the best, most effective, most cost-effective strategy is something that's tried and true. It's not something that's like sexy and new and innovative. And under the old scoring criteria, that was problematic, and, kind of left reviewers giving the person a poorer score, even though they were actually proposing the appropriate methodology. Under the new scoring criteria, the first bullet is assess the extent to which innovation should be factored into the impact of the project, if it's even relevant in this setting. So they kind of give you like an out for that. So in situations where somebody truly is doing innovative methodology, I've just kept the two in the cycles this year. I've just kept significance and innovation as two separate subheaders and let innovation stand on its own and kind of display its strengths. In situations where innovation is really not a big selling point of the project, I've tended to put them together into one subheader. So it would be like A, significance and innovation. So, and I have seen some people also use the scoring criteria as the headers, where it's like factor one, feasibility of the study, or whatever the factor one is. Off the top of my head, I forget exactly how it's worded, but I've mushed them together because I don't want to draw attention to the fact that innovation isn't a big selling point in the project. So I talk about this way more in a previous Ask the Grant Writing actually multiple previous Ask the Grant Writing Expert sessions. If you have more questions, let me know. But that information there's just tons of information in other formats. Okay, I think that was our last question. I'll stay on for another. Oh, no, here's one. Have you seen or are you aware of any funded proposals that have used the new scoring system? Yeah, I've helped clients get funded proposals using the new scoring system. So, do you have a more specific question than that? I will say that one of the things that I've been thinking of doing is doing a mini tutorial and a blog post about lessons learned about the new scoring criteria. But, I feel like everything is still kind of in a state of flux. So, for example, I was on here a couple of weeks ago saying things, like before the shutdown, saying, things are still getting funded. I just helped somebody land a transformative R01. Yay, yay. Now the TR01 NOFO is inactive. It's like, so I feel like every time I come on to say something or plan to give you advice about something, everything's changed again. So it's been a little challenging to give you the most up-to-date information that actually lasts for more than a few weeks. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the new scoring system. I've seen lots of summary statements under the new scoring system, and I've had many clients funded under the new scoring system. So if people are concerned that that's not happening, it is happening. People are getting funded under the new scoring system. So, but yeah, if people have specific questions about that, or if your question is simply, what do those summary statements look like? What are the take-home messages? I'm thinking of doing a mini tutorial on that, just so people have a sense of what those summary statements look like. But yeah, lots of comments about rigor, lots and lots of comments about rigor for approach. So, or factor two. So, yeah, so we're at time. Just a reminder that tomorrow is the last boot camp. You can still sign up for it if you want to attend. We have recordings of the old boot camps. So, if you weren't able to attend any of the boot camps, just log into your dashboard and you can look at the recordings. It is the most up-to-date version of Master the R series that I currently have. I updated the Master the R series pre-recorded virtual course at the end of July. I already had to update it again for the presentations in October. Not extensively, but there were definitely some sections that needed to be updated. So, feel free to check out either of those. First Fridays is November 7th, I think it was. yeah, November 7th at 11:30 Eastern time. If you would like to participate in that, there's Riley will put the sign up in the chat. If you can't see that, just email me, meg@bouviergrant.com. We're happy to get you set up in the system. And thank you very much to Rachel for joining us.
Yeah,
And
thank you for having me.
yeah, and we hope to have you back at some point, and feel free to reach out
Mhm.
to Rachel. And if anybody didn't see any of the information in the chat about her contact or somehow missed it on the screen, just email me and I'm happy to send it to you, meg@bouviergrant.com. So that's it for today. We're going to wrap up. And as the French would say, courage, hang in there, everybody. We wish you the very best of luck on your grant applications. And I will see you either tomorrow at boot camp on November 7th for the virtual office hours, or on November 12th, where I will be doing at this session, doing expert tips to prepare for an NIH Center grant application, which is kind of the second part of that last one that I did. How do you know you're ready for a center grant application? This one is going to be what are the steps to prepare in the months or the year or two leading up to the center grant? And one of the things I'll say is find a project manager and name them in the application. So anyway, good luck, everybody. And I'll see you at one of the upcoming events, and have a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, Rachel.